Dungeon Display Episode 4. This is the part where my attention splits in two. So, let's start with here, back to the narrative. So in the last episode, I had talked about how the above ground thing, I might go the route of a town or some other way. So I've decided to have a play with the route of a cemetery, okay? So the narrative for my dungeon is that it's a dungeon hidden beneath a kind of like an ancient hero cemetery kind of a thing. And the reason it's not deep ground is because nobody's buried in the ground. They're all in tombs above the ground. So the idea is that the dungeon is this secret, I don't know, you could almost have it's kind of like a secret Knights Templar kind of a thing. And that the above ground is where knights of old have been buried. So this is a very, very rough layout at the moment. I'm looking at the likes of a walled garden. So the base won't be there. I'm just using the base at the moment to hold the walls in place, just to get a general feel for shape. Looking at having some fencing back and forth. I'm going to experiment with a painted backdrop of a kind of like a sunsetty sky or a night sky or something like that. We'll see. The trees, I've grabbed trees from a Warcry set called the Soul Drain Forest. I hate these trees. But they should work well for this. What I don't like particularly about the trees, I don't like these weird root systems for a start. But in order to fit these on, I'm going to have to cut them all down anyway. So the root systems will disappear. I even had a thought, because the trees are fake trees, to make it look like it's a normal place, I'm thinking wherever I put a tree, underneath in the ceiling of the dungeon, I might put little bolts as if they're holding the tree in place. And then the odd little stray bolt that has been revealed above. So, just to give it a bit of quirkiness to the whole thing. So then you come to the gate. So this would be the main entrance into the crypt. And then from the crypt, you get into the dungeon. Dungeon-wise, nothing much has changed here other than I've added these things here as an experiment. They will go the other way, like that. If you zoom back a bit there, Justin, you can kind of get the full effect of what I'm thinking here to try and give almost like a sense of support and structure to the whole thing. So a bit like that. You're giving me a thumbs up. Is that because you like what I'm doing, or?
I can see what you're doing.
Yeah. So that's to give a sense of support and structure. I quite like the effect of it. I think it gives a really cool, weight to the thing. Right, down. It was pointed out to me in here where we're going to have the smithies, okay, that if we have a furnace in there, we're going to need a chimney. And this is a wonderful idea. And this is an aspect of the dungeon that I'll be moving on to this week, which is called, tentatively, Connecting the Layers. What I want to do is to find little narrative ways of connecting sub-layers to top layers, okay? Obvious ways to do that, sets of stairs. So I'll be looking at putting in some spiral staircases. Here you can see I'm going to do it by removing this, so this is all just one big drop down. But other ways to do it is I'm going to try and see if I can work out to create a cool chimney system that goes up through the dungeon and then comes out and is disguised inside a little tomb or something.
Or a tree stump.
Or a tree stump. Yeah, could be a cool way to do it. So that's one way. Another thing I'm looking to do is the well. Okay, so I'm not sure how I'm doing the well just yet, whether it'll be a well or a staircase, but coming out of the well, I found these awesome tentacles from Mythic Battles. And I'm not telling Justin, but I'm about to steal them. And I'm thinking of having the tentacles coming out of that whole shaft kind of thing.
Hang on. That's the Poseidon set.
Yep, it certainly is. Look, a lot of people have said you should put this character in it and that character in it. Remember, this is a stage, okay? So I don't want monsters or gribblies in it too much. But a set of tentacles, man. You know, a set of tentacles. I think that could be kind of cool. And once again, you know, if tentacles are creeping their way up through the shaft that's going up as far as either a well or possibly a tomb and a spiral staircase, either way, it will connect the top to the bottom in some capacity. Right, so I have another week or two of work on narrative and layout and the likes. I want to get Brother Lloyd in to have a wee look at some point. I always like to pick his brain just on these last little bits and pieces. But so far, I'm happy. I'm also very happy that the Games Workshop graveyard stuff mingles lovely. It mixes lovely with the Archon dungeon sets, which is making up the vast bulk of the build. So the two should blend lovely. Right. Of course, I'm working on all this big story stuff, but then the other really important aspect is the finishing, okay? Because as you can see, there's lots of bits and pieces where there's these strange little gaps, and you know, there are lots of things that I'm trying in the dungeon that I'm not sure just how well it'll work. I'm not sure how well it'll light or whatever. So the second job that I'm working on is building a small prototype that I'm going to take to near completion or to completion. And that is what I have here. So the small prototype was built just exactly the same way as the other. I'm trying some stuff out though. So I'm trying covering by actually cutting up spare sprues that I have, spare bits. So if you come over here, basically what I'm doing is just slicing bits off and creating single layers and long single layers. And really I'm just using my old friend, if you look over there, the Army Painter razor saw. However, a razor saw is perfect for whenever you're doing something small like this. But when I have to do all of this, I'm going to need something a little bit more substantial. So I'm going to try and see if I can try out a Proxon mini table saw. So Proxon create little products specifically for hobbyists, model shipbuilders and the likes. And they have a circular table saw, a mini one. So I've got that and a fine blade coming in, and myself and Justin will see if I can keep my fingers.
I'm having a Jeremy Clarkson moment. Power!
We need power. We do need power. So when it comes to this, I'm going to have to start using the power tools. Right, other things that I've done. Glued it together. So I've lots of experimentation with the placement of plastic glues and the likes to see, you know, what I can do to give it some rigidity. And this lovely styrene-y kind of stuff here, okay, is beautiful. Works lovely with plastic glue. Basically what I've just been doing is slicing off, well, I've been using the razor saw, but it's not very straight. Use a ruler for this, guys, when you're doing this at home.
Or your mini table saw.
Yeah, or your mini table saw. Taking that and then dropping some glue, and then that both covers gaps and gives a little bit of extra rigidity to those points where the actual dungeon walls meet. So I've put them in. I have marked up where I'm going to cut out here. so as to see what a drop will look like. I haven't put anything into the holes in the back, but I have filled all the holes on the floor. I have cut small walls at the back just to test to see what it looks like. So if I do leave a bit, I can have a little small wall in there. I'm also experimenting with the idea of little small walls that I could even just drop into the dungeon in general, just to give a sense of structures that are or were there. And then finally, you will find this odd, but I started to do some tests of the gap filling, but I'm just testing using blue tack, okay? I test using blue tack because it doesn't set. I can work with it and take it out and put it back in, and to just to get the feel for what the gap filling is going to be like. I could potentially use blue tack in the long run, because once you put some super glue over blue tack and super glue do tend to go quite hard. I might go that route. What will probably be more likely to happen is I'll get a 2-part epoxy, like a brown stuff or a grey stuff, like a milliput kind of a thing, and drop it in and do it that way. But the blue tack gives me some opportunity to play with this stuff at the moment. This is an experiment for the edges of the dungeon. So these are overkill on the edges of the dungeon. So what I wanted to do was to cut them in half. And then when you cut it in half, you can use one half over on the right-hand side of the dungeon, or the left-hand side as this is, and use the other half over on the right-hand side of the dungeon. And that way you get a cool 2 for 1. Yeah. So that is roughly where I'm at. My next step is, these are printed for a gaming table that I'm doing in here in the visitor center. But I'm asking my lovely Mr. Justin to see if he can rattle me some out on the resin printer, hollow, and we'll see how well that works. And then one final thing, Justin, another piece of narrative that I thought you might enjoy. Somewhere in here is a big-ass boulder, and I'm going to have it perched and held up by a couple of wooden planks. Okay? So another nice little fun piece of narrative, my ode to Indiana Jones. Right. That's your lot for episode 4. I have plenty to be getting on with. This week I'm going to be waiting for the power tools to arrive to help me speed up the build, but most of this week any time that I can get, I'm going to probably put it into this to see what other little bits and pieces I need to do, and then run a quick paint job over it just to see how it looks when it's painted up, and get an idea of how many gallons of Agrax Earthshade I'm likely to need for this.
Dirty down.
Dirty. I'm not using dirty down. It's water activated. And the problem I have is dirty down would give me a really quick way of doing all of this. But if I went back in to do anything over the top of it, it might reactivate. I suppose I could always varnish it and then do it over the top of it. Man, he could be onto something. Right. That's your lot. To recap, the bulk of the build is from the Archon Dungeons and Lasers. I've introduced some of the Mantic terrain crate bits to flesh out and to give me lots of little nice narrative pieces. I got the Sigmarite Mausoleum set from Games Workshop, and that's giving me my above ground cemetery. And then I nicked the trees out of the Soul Drain Forest set from Warcry. They go under another name as well, as something like a fairy circle of trees or whatever. But 2 sets came in that box. So I have nicked the trees out of that. They should be kind of nice by the time I've finished with it, because I'm going to have a play, Justin, at painting the whole thing autumn. So I'm going to go with that autumn scene with lots of oranges and reds and browns. And then I can use the autumn leaves. Oh, yes. This top piece, I'm going to use the wallpaper to do the cobble effect. And then I'm going to wallpaper the undersides of all of these to use the stone effect wallpaper that we have to create the ceilings of the dungeon. So, yeah, it's all good. Right. I will see you in episode 5. Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.